Is the Ryzen 5 7600X CPU fast enough to unlock every bit of performance from the Intel ARC B580 graphics card? Or maybe it's a total overkill? Let's find out. To test this, we are going to take a look at three distinct scenarios. One is a very CPU-demanding AAA game. Two is just a normal AAA game that isn't particularly GPU or CPU demanding. And three, it's a competitive title where we'll aim to achieve the highest FPS possible using competitive settings. By the way, if you're interested in any of the products featured in this video, you can find them on Amazon and the links in the description below. Let's start with the CPU-demanding AAA game, Cyberpunk 2077. We are going to test all games at 1440p resolution for a very simple reason. Once upscaling is enabled and set to quality mode, the performance gap between 1080p and 1440p resolutions is completely gone, and the 1440p monitor simply delivers a much more pleasant experience using this PC setup. If you want to learn more, then check out my dedicated videos testing 1080p as well as 1440p performance in various games using this combination. Let's do the high graphics quality preset, that is the best option, and ultra quality mode, CSS2, resolution upscaling. This is comparable to DLSS quality mode and the FSR quality mode. Intel just calls it differently. The crowd density setting is what stresses the CPU the most in this game. Thankfully, in this game, we can adjust this setting to lower the stress on the CPU or make it higher, but not in every game. It won't be available in every game. Some games are just designed with that particular feature in mind. For example, hordes of enemies in Space Marine 2. Yeah, you can't turn it off because that is an integral part of the game. But for the purpose of this test, let's start with the absolute maximum high crowd density to stress the CPU to its limits. Field of view is set to 100. I'll turn off all these nasty things, motion blur, film grain, all that stuff. This one as well. Everything else is set to high. In terms of frame rate, this is quite a nice experience. 80 plus to 70 plus. So the FPS is staying at well above 60. However, if you noticed, the GPU load. The GPU is not fully loaded. Sometimes it drops to 70+% utilization. And that tells me that there is a CPU bottleneck going on right now. It is happening. Oh, 61 FPS I've seen just then. Briefly, but it was there on the screen. Unfortunately, the 7600X cannot deliver high frame rates in this particular game. That is very CPU heavy, and we've seen 50 plus FPS just then as we entered a heavily populated area. That FPS drop happened as all of those NPCs were loading in, and as you can see, if we just try to replicate that once more, the FPS drop is not as significant, but we're still seeing dips below 60 FPS. 56, 53, wow, okay. But once again, this is like the worst case scenario. Or at least one of the worst cases. Anyway, with this particular setting, with maxed out crowd density, the 7600X is not fast enough to unlock every bit of performance from the Intel ARC B580. There you go. Even the B580 needs a more powerful CPU in worst case scenarios, especially if you want a consistent 60 plus FPS. But thankfully we can actually adjust the CPU intensive setting in this game. Let's go for medium crowd density and see how that will affect the performance. Once again, the start is quite promising, but we still see those GPU utilization dips here and there. The FPS is higher though. and the GPU load is higher as well. It is not consistently at 99 or 100%. That would constitute the GPU being fully loaded. But still, look at that. We're seeing 100 plus FPS over here, 80 plus, 70 plus over here, 60 plus, 63 was the lowest one I've seen just then. But we're not getting those horrible dips to 50 plus anymore. The FPS is staying at 60 plus consistently. The medium crowd density setting is a part of the high graphics quality preset in this game that we have selected at the beginning. So there's that. I artificially increased that crowd density. If you're looking for a 60 plus FPS, then it is absolutely possible. And this feels and looks pretty good. Obviously, CSS2 doesn't look as good as DLSS4 or FSR4. The CPU is still holding back the GPU. We could get more FPS. So let's go ahead and lower that crowd density to its lowest setting, low, and see if that's going to be enough to fully load the GPU. There are significantly fewer NPCs around now. So yeah, the experience is different from medium as well as high crowd density. The night city is not as populated, it doesn't look as busy. It looks like an early morning city. But what about the GPU load? It is still fluctuating. So even the lowest crowd density setting does not allow us to load the GPU fully. There are still some performance dips here and there, but we're close to that 100% load. There are very few scenarios where we are seeing dips, but I've seen one at like 87% utilization just then. So yeah, it's still not quite enough to unlock the full potential of the B580, but now the performance looks good. The experience is smoother, more fluid, because the frame rate is staying at 70 plus FPS pretty consistently. Obviously 80 plus right now, but those dips to 70 plus are still happening. 90 plus in other areas in the game. Pretty good, pretty good. This is an acceptable level of performance already for a nice, smooth experience. But the result is that the Ryzen 5 7600X is actually not fast enough to unlock the full potential of the ARC B580 in the most CPU demanding games that are available on the market right now. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is your average AAA game in 2025. It's a fresh release and it has modest system requirements, not particularly high and not particularly low, somewhere in the middle. And that is why it's a great example that we should definitely check out. We're at 1440p, starting with the Ultra Graphics Quality preset. XeSS, resolution upscaling, is set to quality mode. That's the only option between native and resolution upscaling, so we'll select the quality mode. This graphics settings configuration delivers a pretty acceptable level of performance to enjoy this game, but it's not gonna stay at 60 plus at all times. So it might be not the best graphics settings configuration to enjoy the game properly, especially if you want it to be at 60 plus FPS at all times. For example, over here, we're seeing a dip to 49 FPS, all right? But the GPU load is staying at 100% consistently. Let's see what happens if we try to push the FPS higher. Let's lower the graphics quality to high. CSS stays on quality mode. Alright, this is a nicer, more fluid experience. 90 plus FPS over here. The GPU is staying at 100% load consistently. So there is no CPU bottleneck. It is all GPU. GPU is the bottleneck, and that's what we want to see. 80 plus FPS over here. Still, the GPU is staying at 100%. Nice. It is safe to conclude that in this type of games, the B580 is absolutely fine when paired with the Ryzen 5 7600X. You'll get your money's worth from this combo in most AAA games. Let's push the FPS a little bit higher, just for the science sake. Medium graphics quality preset, let's go. 100 plus FPS, and the GPU is still fully loaded. The CPU is at close to 50% utilization now. Oh, 130 FPS. Nice. So, maybe this CPU can actually deliver a high refresh rate experience here. Let's see. Let's lower some other settings and push this even further. Low graphics settings. Let's go. 160 FPS. Yeah. And the GPU is still fully loaded. No issues. Can we get more? Let's lower the resolution upscaling quality to balanced. Yeah, we're now at 170 plus and the GPU is still fully loaded, so the CPU is quite capable. Oh, I spoke too soon. Just then the GPU load dropped. Yes, we have reached the limit. This is it. Around 160 to 170 FPS in this particular game. Obviously it will be different for each individual game. Every game stresses CPU differently, but we found the limits of this particular title. Lastly, let's take a look at a competitive gaming scenario. This is Marvel Rivals. We are at 1440p resolution using a very aggressive upscaling setting. That's XeSS performance mode, and all the graphic settings are set to the absolute minimum. This kind of resolution upscaling setting is still kind of usable, I would say, but it doesn't look nice. There are some visual issues here and there, the image is not as sharp, and let's take a look at this, right? 100 plus FPS, and that's what our GPU can do. And this is the kind of frame rate our CPU can do, which is a lot higher. So the GPU is the bottleneck in this particular case. The CPU can do a lot more frames per second. Let's take a look at this segment B. Yeah, very similar scenario. But the FPS is staying at above 100 pretty consistently. At least so far. There are no massive FPS inconsistencies, so at least the performance is pretty smooth, pretty stable. 100 plus FPS, well, 120 plus FPS pretty consistently most of the time, but there are some dips here and there to around 100, 105. We'll see the result in just a moment. Segment C is almost at the end. And here we go. The experience is smooth. Average FPS is 140, 1% low, 110. And here is the graph. The yellow is our CPU. The purple is our GPU. It's way down there, which means that the GPU is the bottleneck, and quite a significant bottleneck in this particular case. The CPU is quite fast for this type of games. Let's lower the resolution upscaling to the absolute minimum, ultra performance, and try again. This reduces the stress on the GPU because the graphics is even worse, but this is absolutely unusable. Take a look at this pixelated mess. I'm not sure if the camera can pick it up and if you'll be able to notice that on YouTube, but this is not pleasant. It's making it very difficult to track targets or to even spot what's going on in certain cases, because there's a lot of shimmering, a lot of textures don't look right, because the the internal resolution is just very low at the moment. Extremely low. Ultra performance is yikes. That's rough. And the FPS is, of course, higher. The average is higher. It's 160 now. I think it was something like 130 to 140 previously. But yeah, it's not a pleasant experience, is it? quite interesting. Let's see how the result will turn out to be. We're almost done. Segment C. This is supposed to be like the most GPU intensive segment. And here is the result. Very smooth, 163 FPS average, 108, 1% low. And those lines on the graph are a little bit closer together, but they're still quite far apart, which means that we're still heavily GPU limited in this scenario. In conclusion, this is a well-balanced combo for just regular AAA gaming. However, if you're building a PC to primarily play competitive games at high frame rates, then it's best to allocate more money towards a more powerful graphics card, because the 7600X is pretty capable of delivering high frame rates, and the B580 is no match to it in this particular scenario. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about this combo? And if you're interested in any of the products featured in this video, you can find them on Amazon at the links in the description below. If you found this video helpful, then don't forget to reward my work with a like. It helps out tremendously, and I really appreciate it. Furthermore, subscribe for more videos like this if you haven't already. It was I, Vadim. Until next time.